It's very simple and is what no one is really saying in this room, which is part of the reason active measures have worked in this U.S. election is because the commander-in-chief has used Russian active measures at time against his opponents. President Trump stood on a stage and cited what appears to be a fake news story from Sputnik News that disappeared from the internet. He denies the intel from the United States about Russia. He claimed that the election could be rigged. That was the number one theme pushed by RT, Sputnik News, white outlets all the way up until the election. The other part that I think we should be looking at is follow the trail of dead Russians. There's been more dead Russians in the past 3 months that are tied to this investigation who have assets in banks all over the world. They are dropping dead even in Western countries. These are all huge openings to understand how they are funded by the Russian government. I don't have the capability to do that from where I sit, but I think that's a huge angle.
Former FBI Special Agent Clint Watts testifying yesterday on Capitol Hill, and he joins us now. Thank you for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Mike, take it.
Mr. Watts, off of your testimony yesterday, which was enlightening and frightening, and we're in the early stages of this investigation as a country and as a business, the media, news business. But at this point, are you worried or concerned about the potential of collusion between elements of the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence services?
Yes. There's two ways to look at how Russian active measures get propelled, amongst the Trump campaign. Is it coordination and synchronization? And at times we saw people say, hey, on Twitter, I've talked to Guccifer. I've talked to WikiLeaks and they've got something coming out. To me, that's collusion when I see that. The other part is opportunism, which is also strange. Why would you look to Russian propaganda to go against your American opponent? That's crazy, especially coming from a Republican candidate, looking back to the Reagan era. This is the party that was tough on the Soviet Union, tough on Russia, and we've got a candidate and now president that's citing Russian propaganda to go after his opponents. Wow. So either scenario is scary. I think collusion's, the worst case, obviously.
David Ignatius is in D.C. and he has a question. David.
Fred, I want to ask you what for me remains one of the mysteries here, which is why the Obama administration didn't move more aggressively back last summer when information about what the Russians were doing was beginning to be clear. Why didn't they do more, and could they have deterred some of this Russian action if they had?
I think the big miss on the Obama administration is they didn't understand that the hacking drives influence. We were obsessed with hacking, just hacking in investigations. They did not understand that the whole purpose of the hacking was to influence the campaign and to arm Russian propaganda so they could influence the campaign. I think that's the first time they've ever seen it, and there's a disjointed nature in our government between the FBI's investigation and what the implications would be from an intelligence standpoint. I think now they understand it. When it happened back July, August last year, they didn't know how to react and therefore were slow and didn't do anything.
So to David's question, so you think that gap lies at the FBI, that they're the ones who didn't really make that connection between the two, and there was nobody at Justice, there was nobody in the White House, there was nobody anywhere else who said to them, hey guys, there are broader implications than simply whether the Russians are getting into our email systems?
No, I think it's one of those seams that you see when we don't have a good whole of government approach for a threat. We've been so distracted on terrorism over the last 3 to 5 years with the ISIS threat that no one is looking at why do they really want to hack this information. We've always thought it's been compromise information, to hack into people's accounts, to steal their bank account information. Nobody was really focused on why would they want this. There's a gap. I don't think it's the FBI's fault. They were doing the investigation they were supposed to, but who covers down on Russian influence? That's really the intel agencies, and is there that synchronization between law enforcement and intel?
So Clint, let me ask you this question. It's just a gut. Yeah, a gut question, gut answer. We had General Hayden on laughing a couple of weeks ago, saying this was the greatest operation that the Russians have ever run. Everything has fallen in place, and we've fallen right into there. I'm wondering, there are possible crimes to pursue, and we have to pursue those crimes. But every day that we're on television, and for 24 hours a day, we're obsessed on how the Russians have hacked, how the Russians have tried to impact us, how the Russians have tried to impact the White House. we're really just playing into their hands, aren't we? I mean,
Yes.
And most of this for the Russians is just dumb luck that they have stumbled onto a presidential candidate, as you basically said yesterday, that was stupid enough to pick up their fake news.
It's exactly the point of Russian active measures. It's to sow confusion inside your enemy so that they're fighting amongst themselves so that you can maneuver on them. And they've done that so well that we're doing it for them still 3 and 4 months.
And it wasn't really that. It's not that they launched that complex of an operation against us. No more complex than what they do in other Western countries.
It's a duplicate system they use on their own populace, which is to sow disinformation so that their own populace is confused. And it's very simple to do, and they're essentially using us to do their work for them. We're talking about it here today. We've got Intel committee hearings. We've got the president versus the Congress. We've got the president versus the Intel community. It's a home run for a year, even if it settles out in 6 months.
For a country that is struggling to basically make ends meet as oil prices.
Let's go to Casey Hunt in Washington. Casey?
Yeah, Clint, watching your testimony yesterday, you cited very specific instances in the campaign where the now president had picked up on some of these active measures. I was wondering, do you see evidence? Is he still doing it today? And as kind of for my own kind of interest, what should those of us in the media be doing to try to recognize what's going on here from your perspective?
I think the thing I would look for if I was in the media's shoes is just look at that Twitter feed that has real Donald Trump on it. If you look at the accounts, the outlets, these very small fringe outlets that are pushing conspiracies directly at the president, I think you're going to see where a lot of that influence comes from. And it's not just the Russians. There are others trying to influence him as well. But they know that they can get into his decision cycle with any conspiracy that'll bite on. So if they put out a conspiracy that is very personal to his ego, such as the Trump Tower wiretapping claim, then you've got the potential that he'll fall for a conspiracy. We've seen it happen before.
The tentacles of this story are extraordinary, and they are daily, sometimes hourly. And the latest being that 3 members of the NSC staff, National Security Staff, in the employment of the White House for maybe a month when this occurred, go through some incidental intelligence that they end up handing over to Congressman Devin Nunes. Incidental intelligence gathering. Was their task easy, or did they have to really look through a lot of stuff to find what they found?
I think it's bizarre, if anything. Incidental collection happens in any sort of electronic surveillance. I've worked on wiretaps before. When you go through, you minimize that so that people that are innocent aren't discovering it. But if you're going through looking for a political point, which is I need to prove a claim that I've made already and I don't really know if it's true, you can pull in all sorts of data. What we don't know is the context of this. And if you're doing a good Intel committee hearing, which I think the Senate is and the House is less so, you're going to have intelligence professionals that have looked at all of this come to you and say, this is what we were really focused on in the investigation and the Intel analysis, and this is what's really got merit to it. And incidental collection that doesn't have any merit is going to be pushed away. We just did the reverse of that. We went and dug for a little nugget of gold to justify a tweet somewhere, and instead we've totally bypassed a good bipartisan, non-influential process.
All of this chaos, we have to underline this fact, all of this chaos, including the trashing of our greatest allies, to justify a tweet that everyone still says is a lie.